Well, hello and welcome. Today's exciting episode is me making that gold Egyptian looking tweed up into a Chanel style jacket. It's perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Perfect jacket. Okay, when I call this fabric a tweed, it is using the word tweed in the technical sense. It is a textile of loosely woven yarns and ribbons. It's mostly just ribbons and bits of gold foil. Oh my goodness. I had to hand stitch through all those ribbons, metallic ribbons. My fingers are so sore. So I'm using a discontinued McCall's pattern, but I highly, highly recommend the Vogue 7975 because the McCall's one I'm using has a few mistakes in it. And yeah, if you're not good at drafting, just go for the Vogue 7975. It doesn't have any mistakes and the instructions are really clear. And I already have 100 of those jackets. Not kidding, literally 100. So I'm going to go with the dodgy McCall's one just because it has a bit more ease in the sleeves. And I'm going to put lots of beading on this jacket. So I need to be able to sew in and out of the sleeve. So I need a little bit more room in the sleeves. But if you're just making a jacket, the Vogue 7975 is your best bet, in my opinion. Anyway, let's get on with this video. Before we can get into that complex, difficult tweed, we have to make the structural layer because tweed is very saggy and baggy and it has no structural integrity. So we need something to support it. So I'm using netting that it's quite cheap. And if you go to a big store like Joann's and you just, it's the same kind of netting that you use to make a 1950s petticoat out of. So you cut out one set of all the pieces in the structural layer. As I said, I'm doing loads of beading, so I'm going to cut out 2 layers. But for most people, if you're just making a normal jacket, 1 layer is perfect. And then I'm doing pattern matching on my tweed. So what I do is I create a shell with the structural layer, and then I'm going to sew the actual tweed onto it. So what I do is I get this is all the pieces laid out in order from the front right through to the back of the jacket, right through to the other side of the front. But obviously I've sewn them together in 3 sections. We've got front left, back, front right. So this is just the way I do it so that I can pattern match. And everyone has their own method, but this is a really good way because I buy the least amount of tweed that I can, and that way I can get a really expensive tweed. So this is how I do it. So the back of the tweed is this one of the tweed is quite confusing. Just to hold all those ribbons into the weave, the back is very gold. So yeah, it's just the way it is. So don't let that confuse you. So what we do is you lay down the tweed back, reverse side up, and then you pin the shell. I find it easier to pin the back first because it's one whole piece. And I line up the bottom of the back. So the back center, so that middle third of it is a flat piece. So I line up that with one of the ribbons in the tweed, and I pin that into place. I pin the whole of the centerpiece into place. And once I've pinned that, then I pin across the whole of the natural waist, and because that's the straightest bit. And then for the back 2 bits on the left and the right, they sort of are molded. So once you've done the flat bit in the center, you have to pin the other 2 bits carefully. And as you pin them, you sort of scooch the tweed into place. You sort of either have to sort of push it up a little bit or down a little bit to the left, to the right, because you've got to mold around the shoulder blades and the hips and things like that. And then once you've done the back piece, then it's time to do the 2 front pieces, and you sort of, It's a little bit more difficult because obviously it's two pieces, but you've got to try and work with them as one so that you can pattern match perfectly. And again, the center front pieces are the flat pieces. So you get them pinned first, and then the center side pieces are the molded ones. The whole volume of the bust comes out of the the front side piece. So yeah, you've really got to take your time to pin that bit correctly. So once you've pinned it, you can either hand stitch it like with all your pieces together, but my bench is one of those thin IKEA work desks, so it's actually quite a narrow desk. It's good for beading, but it's a little less practical when you're sewing, so I just cut out my pieces at this point. But if you're not used to working with the tweed, it's much better to do the stitching first, then cut out each piece, because tweed frays like you would not believe. So it's better to do all the hand stitching around the edge. I always often get asked if you can just use an overlocker to do the edges of a tweed. Tweed is a haute couture. It's like a top end type fabric, and overlocking is for fast fashion. It's to cut costs and make things as quick as possible. So you can do whatever you want, but no, if you're trying to make things in the Parisian high elevated sewing way, then no, you have to do it by hand. But it's also really good practice doing all that hand sewing, just not sewing into metallic ribbons, because that's really difficult on your fingertips. So so as you can see, there is lots and lots of hand sewing these layers together. It's basically just ribbons and this brittle gold foil. That's what this tweed is, with the occasional bit of wool thrown in there. And as you can see, the shell is really molded, and you can see where it's going in at the waist and how there's room for the underarms and room for the hips. So it took ages, but it's totally worth it. It's basically like spray painting this amazing artistic layer onto the outside of this shell. So now we just have to pin them together at the shoulders, only at the shoulders for the moment. And once that's done, we'll set it aside, because the next step is machine sewing. But I also need to machine sew the sleeves. So I have to cut them out first, and it's much easier to stitch the structural layer to the tweed for the sleeves. So, but you have to do the torso first to make sure that everything fits, and then use the leftovers of your tweed to do the sleeves. And on this particular Egyptian gold tweed that I'm doing, I'm going to use heavy beads on the upper sleeve and less heavy beads under the sleeve. So that is why when you see me in the and like I did on this one, so on some of my jackets I use 2 layers of structural netting on every piece. So this one has the same amount of beads on the undersleeve as it has on the upper sleeve, whereas the gingerbread jacket has different types of beads on the upper sleeve that it does on the undersleeve, and the weight of those impacts how much structure I put on there. I'm just getting a number of questions about this, so that is why I personally put less structural layer on the undersleeve for the jackets where I know I'm going to use light beads on the undersleeve. Don't stress yourself out about what I do, because I'm 15 years into my beading journey. I'm just off on my own little planet, but just 1 layer of structural netting on each piece will be perfect for you. So I've machine sewn the shoulders of the torso. I've machine sewn both sides of the sleeves. So now I just need to hand stitch the seams down. To do that, I just need to splay open the seam allowance and pin it into place. Then I can hand stitch it. And it's really delicate. Tweed just wants to fall apart. So it's better if you just pin it into place and then you can hand stitch it, taking one pin out at a time. If you're stressed and you're short of time, then it's a really frustrating exercise, but otherwise it's quite relaxing. I hand stitched all the sleeves, then I hand stitched the seam allowance on the shoulders. So, and I pulled this, carefully turned the sleeves out. The sleeves aren't exactly right, because that's all the fabric I had left. So they don't match exactly. So, I mean, I can't go back in time and buy more fabric or anything. So I think it was a little foolish of me to try and make such a difficult tweed up in one day. It is what it is. Once I've put, it's going to be over beaded the same way my dragonfly jacket was, so it's not going to be noticeable. All you'll see is that all the ribbons are pattern matched right across it, and the bits in between the ribbons you won't notice so much. Anyway, now that the sleeves are done, it is time to reinforce the shoulders. So I'm using I just use up scraps of, so that's why they're random colours. But basically, you just smooth out the shoulders, and it also strengthens them and makes them nice and round, so or nice and flat. So you just put 2 layers down, and then hand stitch it into place. I hand stitch across the back, hand stitch across the front and around the shoulders. Once that's done, I fold it down and pin the sides together finally, and I also pin in the center front lining pieces. I'm not using the Egyptian gold tweed. It's too fragile to use as lining pieces. I'm just using a standard brown wool as the lining tweed pieces, so that's why it looks a little different. It's just, I care about what my jackets are going to look like in 25 years, not just what they're going to look like after the first few wears. So here we go. And it annoys me that the pattern matching doesn't match, but obviously it's just the sides is slightly different. Anyway, so next we have to do the neckline, and what you do is, I find the easiest way for me is I just go around with pins and I mark where the actual neckline is going to be. I do a deep neckline just because I wear my jackets, I like them to be practical and I like to be able to move more. So I mark the neckline, I clip the curves, then I fold it back to the actual neckline, and then I hand stitch it twice to keep everything in place. I'm going to do, this is just the outer jacket, and then once I finish beading, I'm going to make the silk lining and hand stitch it in. So yeah, that's why I hand do the neckline like that. So next we set the sleeves. You just pin them in place, do the bottom 2/3 and then the top third, which is the difficult bit. And then you machine sew it twice, and then you clip the curve. So clip the bit under the arm, and then push the seam allowance up into the sleeve and pin it into place. Then go around and hand stitch it once from the outside and once from the inside. So you've got to hand stitch it twice. And then ta-da, it is finished. It is such an amazing tweed, and I cannot wait to bead this. It is going to be just so amazing to work with in a beading capacity. But oh my gosh, my fingers are so sore from doing all this. And obviously I haven't pinned the hem up or sewn it up yet. It is all hand stitched, so that's why the ribbon at the bottom is miraculously staying on and not falling out. It's all hand stitched into place, so it's going to be fine to bead. And I've just turned up the cuffs and pinned them into place so you get a good idea of what the cuffs are going to look like. And yeah, it's such an amazing tweed. I haven't quite decided. I thought I had decided on the beading, as before I did made the actual jacket, I procrastinated a little and I got out another bead mix. So I've bought this tweed in 2020, so there's been lots of different ideas about what sort of beading I'll do. Originally I made beaded trim, but then after I decided to do embellishment where that you bead directly onto the jacket, I thought maybe I'll use these ones. In ancient civilization, maize and corn were quite important, so I thought that'd be good. And the seashells, before coins were invented, people used seashells as currency, so I thought that would be good as well. And then all these different teals and steel greys, sort of steel blues, I thought they would tie in with. So these bead clusters are what I originally made for the beaded trim, but I don't think they would work on an embellished jacket. So I was thinking the antique gold, the teals, as well as some brown sequins. But that's what I was thinking. And so I made this all up into a bead mix with some of those other gold beads. But then I was working on something else and I don't know, I get bored and I just start thinking about bead mixes. Anyway, I thought of these beads here. There was champagne with the occasional blue one or tealy blue one in there. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I mix these in with the Egyptian mix, they will be amazing. So that was it for the next couple of weeks. And I worked on other things, but I was just like thinking about these designs. And then when it came to the gingerbread jacket, the beads I had set aside for that didn't work. So I was like, ooh, I could steal all the champagne and some of the gold ones from that and use them on the gingerbread jacket, and that jacket looks amazing. I absolutely love the way that it turned out. I don't regret it at all, but it does mean that I've used up some of the sort of medium to medium large gold beads that I really did need for this Egyptian tweed. I've now been used in the gingerbread jacket. So I don't know. I mean, you could obviously, peacock feathers have that dull gold, and you could do dark greens and dark blues, teal and antique gold. That would be amazing. But I think I'm just going to use, there's a little bit of leftover champagne glass and cut glass beads, and as well as I've got some sort of yellow gold and antique gold, as well as blue steel grey blue and teal. So it's a big old mess at the moment, but yeah, I created this before I made the jacket because I was procrastinating. I was like, this is too difficult to make this tweed, so I'll just make a bead mix quickly first. So yeah, these are the ones I've got aside, but now having made the jacket, I feel like these beads are too small. So I might go for blue and teal beads and maybe some gold ones that are slightly larger, because I just really love the way the dragonfly jacket turned out. So kind of similar size beads as that one. So medium to medium large beads, and instead of lots of small ones, obviously on the underarm you're going to use the small lighter plastic beads. But yeah, I don't know, but I also love the idea of adding a little bit of dark green in there to do like a peacock feather. We shall see. I've still got weeks and weeks. Well, actually, next month is next week. Next year is next week. Goodness me. Time's flying. So I'm beading it as part of the Desperately Seeking Susan capsule wardrobe. Calling it a capsule wardrobe is a little bit ridiculous because occasionally I just do wear a dress, but mostly I just wear a jacket, t-shirt and jeans. So my idea of a capsule collection is 10 jackets and as well as just the same t-shirt and jeans that I always wear. So yeah, I'm not sure capsule collection is the right term for it. I'll throw in a few dresses, I guess, but mainly it'll just be jackets. And I love that iconic jacket she wears with the Egyptian, with the pyramid on the back. I don't want to make a jacket exactly like that, but I do want to make spend the month making iconic jackets and then choose like the most iconic out of the iconic ones that I've made. Anyway, that's for next month. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you've been inspired to pattern match. And sorry about my complaining, but oh, my fingers are so sore from all this hand sewing and stabbing the needles through those metallic ribbons. Ouch. But totally worth it. It looks very beautiful. Anyway, thanks for watching. Happy sewing.